Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we are unpacking one of the most dramatic, honestly, rapid-fire geopolitical shifts we've seen in recent memory. We're talking about the sudden reopening of the Strait of Hormuz and diving deep into this massive and frankly highly unexpected new agreement struck between the United States and Iran. From intense, active demining operations out on the water to unprecedented diplomatic funding, let's jump right in and see exactly what the sources are telling us.
Now, to really grasp the scale of this news, we've got to look at the economic stakes first. The Strait of Hormuz, it's not just some waterway. It is literally the ultimate bottleneck for the world's energy supply, right? So with navigation having been completely choked off recently by the outbreak of war in the Middle East, this sudden unblocking is an absolute massive shockwave for the global economy. It means international trade can finally flow freely again. To unpack all of this, we're going to follow a clear roadmap. First up, opening the Hormuz bottleneck. Then, we'll go inside the US-Iran deal. Third, a shift in leadership. Fourth, securing the strait. And finally, what happens next.
All right, Section 1, opening the Hormuz bottleneck. Let's look at the immediate headline that's impacting global trade right this second.
So the crucial point here is that the strait isn't just magically safe overnight. President Trump announced the waterway will be completely open by Friday, but as of right now, it's only partially opened. And you might be wondering, why is that? Well, because there are active, highly dangerous hunting operations currently underway in the water to make absolutely sure the area is completely demined. It's a very tense logistical transition going from a war footing back to everyday commercial reality.
And that brings us to the core condition of this whole reopening. Speaking ahead of the G7 summit in France, President Trump hailed the deal and drew a very hard line, saying, "The main thing is Iran will not have a nuclear weapon." That single demand right there is the absolute foundational pillar that this entire diplomatic breakthrough rests on.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, inside the US-Iran deal. Let's see how this builds into a much broader, comprehensive framework.
What's truly unprecedented here is just the sheer scope of this agreement. Reports indicate that this is structured as a massive 14-point deal. And while that strict no nukes condition is the absolute anchor we just talked about, a deal of this magnitude obviously requires massive concessions and incentives on both sides. Which actually brings us to the financial engine that's really driving this whole framework.
To really grasp the sheer magnitude of this diplomacy, just listen to this number, $300 billion. The framework involves a staggering $300 billion US reconstruction fund for Iran. Guys, it is incredibly difficult to overstate how significant that is. I mean, it represents a colossal injection of capital meant to rebuild the Iranian state post-conflict. It's essentially fundamentally rewriting the economic landscape of the Middle East in exchange for those security guarantees.
But how exactly did we arrive at a $300 billion agreement? We've got to look back at the dramatic events of the past few months. So let's jump into Section 3, a shift in leadership. This timeline objectively maps what is basically a geopolitical earthquake. It all kicked off on February 28th with the start of the US-Israeli war and the killing of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And the immediate aftermath? Just pure turbulence. A first set of leaders was removed, followed quickly by a second set. It's really only now, with this new third iteration of leadership in Tehran, that this diplomatic breakthrough even became a possibility.
And this quote from President Trump vividly captures the whiplash of this whole dynamic. While he didn't specify the individuals in those first two ousted groups, he explicitly credited this very smart third set of leaders for coming to the table. Washington is now officially stating that they're actually getting on well with Tehran's new leadership, which is a massive pivot from where we were just a few months ago.
But, even with the deal made on paper, a very real physical challenge remains. That brings us to Section 4, securing the strait. Here we see a really fascinating split in international alliance dynamics. On one hand, London and Paris are proposing a joint European naval mission to physically secure the waterway. But on the other hand, President Trump is asserting the US won't need much help keeping the strait open. So it really highlights a clear divergence in how Washington and its European allies are viewing maritime security in the wake of this deal.
Which naturally leads us to ask about the immediate next steps on the global stage. Let's look at Section 5, what happens next.
The culmination of this incredibly fast-paced diplomacy is actually happening this Friday with an official signing ceremony. Vice President J.D. Vance is slated to attend. But here is what's highly unusual and honestly quite fascinating. The location for this historic ceremony has been left completely unspecified. It just adds an extra layer of mystery right on top of an already unprecedented deal.
However, if we look back at Washington, the political backdrop remains incredibly complex. Right as this deal is being finalized abroad, the U.S. Senate just narrowly blocked a new legislative bid attempting to rein in the president's war powers. It's a stark reminder that while sweeping deals are being struck overseas, a really intense debate over executive authority and military action is continuing right at home.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to consider this entirely new paradigm. A nuclear-free Iran led by a brand new regime and backed by a $300 billion reconstruction fund. How exactly will this unprecedented financial injection reshape the balance of power, trade, and stability in the Middle East over the next decade? It is the defining question foreign policy experts will be tracking very closely. Thank you so much for joining me, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.